In today's lesson, we're going to learn how to graph a linear equation using intercepts. So first, we need to know how to find the intercept. And we need to know what is an intercept. So the x-intercept is the point where the line crosses the x-axis. The y-intercept is the point where the line would cross the y-axis. All right, so let's give an example of how to find the x and the y intercepts. Before I do that, though, take a minute, pause the video, and make sure that you read through the top section and these two examples, and then come back and we'll do some work. Okay, now that you've had an opportunity to read through the examples, now we'll do a few problems together. So the first section says to find the x-intercept and the y-intercept for the graph of each equation. So I'm going to go zoom in to number 1. And so when we're finding the intercepts, as you saw in the examples, really you're just taking turns substituting zeros in place of x and a 0 in place of y. So if I wanted to find the x-intercept, remember, that's a point that's on the x-axis. All points on the x-axis have y-coordinates of 0. So when I try to find the x-intercept, all I need to do is substitute a 0 in place of y. So I'm substituting 0 in place of y. I'm going to write 0 equals x minus 5. And why am I doing that? Because I'm asking the equation, if you will, if y is 0, what is x? So let's solve this and find out. So to solve this, you're going to add 5 on both sides, and 5 is equal to x. So that means my x-intercept is 5. As an ordered pair, that would be the ordered pair 5, 0. Remember, the x-intercept is a point that is on the x-axis, and all points on the x-axis have y-coordinates of 0. Now let's find the y-intercept for this equation. Remember that the y-intercept is a point on the y-axis. All points that are on the y-axis have x-coordinates of 0. So this time I'm going to substitute a 0 in place of x. Well, 0 minus 5 is negative 5. So I get that the y-intercept is negative 5. When I write that as an ordered pair, it's the ordered pair 0, negative 5. So for number 1, for the equation y equals x minus 5, my x-intercept is 5, 0, and my y-intercept is 0, negative 5. Now you have 2 more problems in this set, and I want you to do problems 2 and 3 exactly like I just did problem number 1. You can look back at the examples to help you if you need help. After you've done those 2 problems, come back and we'll check. All right, so here are the solutions for number 2 and number 3. Number 3 was pretty much straightforward, but number 2 you might have had some difficulty with. For example, when you're trying to find the x-intercept in number 2, you substitute a 0 in place of y. When we do that, we get 0 minus 1 equals 0, which it doesn't. So this means it's not possible. In other words, there is no x-intercept. So when I graph this equation, it will not cross the x-axis. That's what it means. When I do the y-intercept, you're supposed to put a 0 in place of x, but there's no x to do that for. So I end up with y minus 1 equals 0. If I solve that, I have y is equal to negative 1. So it does have a y-intercept, and that's 0, negative 1. Okay, let's go to the next section, and this time we're going to graph each equation using the x and y intercepts. So you only need 2 points to graph a line. We really like to have 3 points or more so we can make sure we're graphing that line appropriately. The third point is kind of to check and make sure you did your work correctly. But technically, you only need 2 points. So your x-intercept and your y-intercept can be those 2 points. So let's do number 4 together. So first I have to do the same steps that I did above, and I have to find the x and the y-intercepts. So I'm going to first find my x-intercept, and it really doesn't matter which one you find first. It makes no difference. But know that when I'm finding the x-intercept, I'm putting a 0 in place of y. So 0 equals negative 3x minus 3. Now it's just an equation that I can solve and find the value of x. So I'm going to add 3 on both sides. So 3 is equal to negative 3x. Then you'll need to divide both sides by negative 3. So I get that x is equal to negative 1. So that means the x-intercept would be the ordered pair negative 1, 0. Now I'm going to find the y-intercept. Which means I'm going to substitute a 0 in place of x this time. So y equals negative 3 times 0 minus 3. Well, negative 3 times 0 is 0, and 0 minus 3 is negative 3. So my y-intercept is negative 3. As an ordered pair, that would be 0, negative 3. So I'm going to plot those 2 points. So negative 1, 0 would be there, and 0, negative 3 would be there. Okay, just like in the last lesson, I took out my box. This is my box for my iPad, Apple Pencil. So I'm going to use this as a ruler. You can use an actual ruler, but you're going to line up your ruler or whatever device you're using, your straight edge, to those 2 points that you've drawn or plotted, and then draw in your line. Always we want to include arrows on either end of the line because this is just the x-intercept and the y-intercept are just 2 of the solutions to the equation y equals negative 3x minus 3. There's an infinite number of solutions. Okay, so that's number 4. I'm going to let you try numbers 5 and 6 on your own. Again, you can look back at my example for help. One thing I do want to point out on number 5, it looks like the negative signs got cut off in number 5 on the graph. So let's add those in where appropriate. Okay, so now go ahead, pause the video, and do 5 and 6 on your own. All right, so let's review these. This is number 5. The x-intercept was negative 5, 0, and the y-intercept was 0, 5. I want you to notice how they chose a weird scale here, and so they counted by 3s, but that's okay. I could still plot negative 5, 0, and same thing here. I guesstimated where the 5 would be on the y-axis. Now, when I got ready to do number 6, the x-intercept should be 9, 0, and the y-intercept 0, 9. But if you are looking closely at my graph, I kind of redrew it. I took I changed my pen color to white, and went over where they had drawn the x-axis and the y-axis because I wasn't able to plot the x-intercept and the y-intercept based on how the coordinate plane was originally drawn. So I took a white marker, which is kind of like I used it as if it were an eraser. And I didn't erase it all the way because I wanted to make sure you could see what I had done. But if you look closely right there, you can kind of see the black lines that were there originally. So I erased their lines and drew in my own x and y axis. And then I was able to plot the x and the y intercepts correctly and graph them. So we had to make a few corrections to this particular worksheet. Okay, so hopefully you have a solid understanding of how to not only find the x and y intercept in an equation, but how to graph an equation using those intercepts. If you have any questions, please contact your teacher. If you've completed this assignment and made the necessary corrections, be sure to upload it and then complete your independent practice.